am very sceptical about the Prime Minister's position on Ukraine. I am very concerned by how many so-called left-wing liberals seem content for war in Europe to go on indefinitely. Are they also happy for their taxes to go up to fund this war? Are they happy for British troops to be put in harm's way directly? I doubt it. Well, the Prime Minister said the UK's support for Ukraine made him proud to be British. I just don't think Keir Starmer knows what it means to be proud to be British. He used to want to abolish the monarchy. His close friend, the Attorney General, Lord Hermer, appears to have represented pretty much every single wrong'un the world has ever seen, up to and including Gerry Adams and a man who facilitated the 9/11 terror attacks. Starmer's a huge Europhile, an international law obsessive. Keir Starmer's approval ratings have tanked in Britain. Many people think he's the worst Prime Minister we've ever had. So scenes like this are very convenient for him. He's there, playing the big man, isn't he? European leaders, Canada's Justin Trudeau is there. Of course Zelensky is. I mean, of course Zelensky's there. He turned up, so we give him an extra £1.6 billion on top of the £2.26 billion, and we let him meet the king. I mean, I'd turn up for that, wouldn't you? Of course European leaders and Trudeau are there. They hate Trump. I mean, they are there as much to show unity against Trump as they are unity against Putin. It's the first time Starmer's had positive press from both the left and the right, so of course he's going to lean into it. But where does that lead us?
We must proceed with strength, and that does now require urgently a coalition of the willing. Mr. Speaker, we agreed on Sunday that those willing to play a role in this will intensify planning now. And as this House would expect, Britain will play a leading role. With, if necessary, and together with others, boots on the ground and planes in the air.
Oh, I bet Putin's quivering in his shoes looking at Rachel Reeves and Angela Rayner flanking Keir Starmer there. But anyway, it looks as though that leads us to British troops in Ukraine and British planes in the sky. So, what happens if Putin shoots at us? Are we at war? Keir Starmer needs to realise that establishment elitist political journalists and his fellow MPs are actually not representative of wider society. Now, the opinion polls on this are very interesting. Should we put British troops in Ukraine in the event of a peace deal? 37% somewhat supported it. A couple of body bags coming back to Britain could change that opinion poll very, very quickly. When it comes to defence spending, most people think it's more important to continue to fund public services than our military. So if we start having to go without in order to protect Ukraine, in fact, I argue we already are, by the way, support for that could fall through very quickly. All this talk of defending Europe by those EU elites, what have they been doing for the last 2 decades? They let this awful picture, and it is an awful picture, and a warning, by the way, this is horrible, OK? It's that famous picture now of a young Syrian boy's body washing up on a beach in Turkey. They let that picture open the floodgates to the Middle East and Africa into Europe. But then they turned a blind eye to stuff like this, time and time again, and they expect us to ignore it and just get on with it.
The moment a truck speeds up and then ploughs through crowds of people gathering for a national celebration in Nice in France.
Let's have a look at who is in Keir Starmer's coalition of the willing. Well, we don't know because no one's telling us. We think it might be France, but it's not Poland and it's not Germany. They won't put boots on the ground. Hungary and Slovakia would veto any NATO plans. It's not actually a united front at all. And Britain could be left very exposed here. Keir Starmer said he's going to do this.
Starting today, I can announce this government will begin the biggest sustained increase in defence spending since the end of the Cold War. Yeah. We will deliver our commitment to spend 2.5% of GDP on defence, but we will bring it forward so that we reach that level in 2027. Yeah. And we will maintain that for the rest of this Parliament.
All right, fine. Not against that. I don't think that many people are against that. But is any other European country doing this? What are they doing? Is it just up to us to pay more, is it? I mean, we say we're giving a £2.26 billion loan to Ukraine. We're not getting that money back, are we? giving a loan to historically one of the most corrupt countries in the world that also happens to be in the middle of a war. Just wave goodbye to that money, everybody. It's not a loan, it's gone, all right? It is always going to be easier for Keir Starmer to toss a load of money at Ukraine instead of sorting out problems in his own country like the NHS, illegal immigration, helping freezing pensioners, farmers. I am not pro-Putin. Russia is obviously the aggressor. But I feel deeply for the Ukrainian people. But I am worried that our European leaders don't seem desperate for peace. They seem to think we're all happy to pay for war, whatever that cost may be. Let's get thoughts on my panel this evening. We have Carol Malone there from the Daily Express, Susie Stride, political commentator, and we've also got Sir Jake Berry as well, former Tory party chairman. Look, this is the issue, and I will say this time and time again, that I think splits GB News viewers and listeners more than any other issue. So, you know, I know there'll be people watching this and listening to this who have completely agreed with what I said, people who've completely disagreed with what I've said. This is probably the biggest split. Where are you on this, Carol, when it comes to what we're seeing at the moment? Do you think we're being left a bit vulnerable? Should we be sorting out more problems at home? What do you think?
I think Starmer particularly, I think this is all gesture politics. It's very easy to talk about putting troops on the ground when he knows full well that Putin will never agree to a peacekeeping force in Ukraine. He just will not agree to it. I think the bottom line is, you know, Europe doesn't have the economic resources to bankroll Ukraine's war effort. Crucially, if Russia decided to invade, what are these peacekeeping forces going to do? Because you know how many are going to be there at any one time? 15,000. That's all. That's from all of Europe put together. They're going to be 3 separate brigades of 15,000, and only 15,000 can be there at any one time. Zelensky has said it would need a force of 200,000 troops to protect Ukraine. Zelensky himself has said that the peacekeeping effort won't work without support from Russia. So let me just finish this about Starmer. I think for Starmer, this is totally self-serving. I think this is a man who was trying to rescue a shattered reputation. And he's making promises he can't keep. He even said in the past couple of days that Ukraine's route to NATO is being speeded up. It's tosh. They're never going to get into NATO. So, for me, this is gesture politics. It's him playing politics, and it's really bad.
Susie, I am concerned that Keir Starmer is thinking that his reputation and his polling is awful, and that he might decide to just plough ahead with whatever here, and actually it's putting us all at risk.
I mean, I feel a bit appalled by this discussion. Sorry, I really genuinely do. I think it's absolutely fine for you guys to have criticism of Starmer on a whole lot of things. But I'm sorry. I mean, is it just me? I don't know about you, but one of the things for me about being British is that we stand up to bullies.
We've not...
Russia... Sorry, let me finish. Sorry, let me finish. Russia, you know, killed a British citizen not that long ago. Could have killed hundreds more. OK, this is a tyrant. This is something that comes to our shores. They have attacked through cyber attacks, the NHS. They have cut lines. Our energy bills have gone through the roof because of the conflict there. Look, we can have differences of opinions, but I think, I'm sorry, if I was Prime Minister right now, this is what I would be doing. You stand up to tyrants. If you let someone like Putin, I'm trying to work out what the alternative here. If you let him get away with what he's doing, if you let him get away with what he's doing, what message does that send to China, North Korea and Iran and all these other countries?
Do you have any idea what the size of our deployable army is in this country? Do you
look, what I agree with...
Sorry, you're saying we have to stand up to bullies.
Yes, we do need to stand... No, because Carol, you're saying that Keir Starmer is doing what he's doing out of gesturing. I think that's wrong. I think that's wrong. I like you personally, but I think that's wrong. And in fact, sorry, but for the first time in a long time, you had James Cleverly, you know, and across... And this is really important. I'm sorry. Let's get it right, guys. This is one of the things that makes us great. Across the House today, everybody was agreeing and saying we stand up to Putin.
Yeah, there's an establishment view, isn't there? I wonder how many of those people will be willing to send their own kids to fight and die.
No, but that's not what needs to go on here. We're talking about peacekeeping troops.
Europeans do not want to die for Ukraine.
It's really important. Should not play politics with this issue.
All right, go on.
Well, I often come here and quite critical of what the government has done. I think Keir Starmer has done very well in the last few days, coming from his successful press conference. He actually showed people how to build a good relationship with Trump. His successful press conference, and I think it's welcome that he has taken this leading role in Europe for the people of Britain. There's two things I would say is, though, first of all, when President Trump was campaigning to become the President of the United States, he said 3 things in relation to Ukraine. The first one he said was that he wanted Europe to take the lead. That is now happening. The second thing he said is that he wanted Europe to increase defence spending, and we've heard from the Prime Minister, Keir Starmer, that is now happening. And he also said that he wanted European troops to hold the peace. And if you believe what the Prime Minister said, and I'm sure he's absolutely sincere and he's making good progress, that is also going to happen. So as much as we might criticise Donald Trump, and those scenes in the Oval Office were appalling. Yeah. As much as we might criticise Donald Trump, actually he is helping make progress to peace here. And the final thing I'd say, Susie, you are absolutely right that there was an appalling murder of British citizens on British soil in Salisbury, poisoned with a Russian chemical. I just wonder why Keir Starmer at that time supported Jeremy Corbyn, who doubted the fact at that time that the Russians had committed that attack. So he was part of the shadow. I
don't know if that's true.
No, it's true.
I mean, look, Jeremy Corbyn, as far as I'm concerned, is an utter joke. This is something we'd all agree on. And do you know what? I probably did more than you guys to make sure that guy was never, Prime Minister of this country, because for me that would have been an utter disaster. And I don't think that is true. Sorry to say that again about Keir Starmer. But I think
you say it wrong. Let's just be clear about the facts, because you said I'm wrong and I'm not. There was an attack in Salisbury, and the British government said, Porton Down, the chemical, radiological and biological weapons unit in Britain, has identified that this Novichok poison has come from Russia. Jeremy Corbyn said, I do not accept that's true. We should send it to Russia for them to test it. Keir Starmer was a member of the Shadow Cabinet and supported Jeremy Corbyn in that. So what you say is wrong, and what I've said is true.
No. Sorry. Let's just get this right. Look, ultimately, at that time, people were in his shadow cabinet and having to be oppressed by Jeremy Corbyn. That's what happened. We all felt oppressed by him. So I think it's a point that's...
How on earth do we think he can stand up to Putin?
No, because the point... No, what I'm saying is, you're kind of towing the party line, but the point is, I think that's just the point of... No, they were towing the party line then. I think what I'm saying now... What I'm saying now is we've had...
Because I want
Yes.
Look, we have that room full of EU leaders there, and I would say, I've said this to our Blue Space, they've not given a toss about Europe.
Nope.
They haven't bothered defending it. They've allowed it to be a pseudo-invasion, as far as I'm concerned. We're seeing terror attacks every other week. We see all this stuff. They've not given a toss about Europe, protecting Europe. And now that they're this coalition of the willing, all right, on paper, great idea, coalition of the willing. Who's in it? You don't even know who's in it. What does it mean?
You touched on it before when you said... then Europe is not willing to die for Ukraine, and then sure as hell not willing to send their kids to die for Ukraine. And all of this is talk. There's going to be the peacekeeping force will not save Ukraine. Because if Putin decides to invade, if you think 15,000 soldiers from Europe is going to put him off, it's really not. This is just a whole load of Europeans trying to look like they're doing something. When Boris was in power, he really did make a difference. He committed money immediately from this country to think, and he shamed Europe and the US into giving money. This is nonsense. What is happening now is never going to protect Ukraine. And that's why the US has to be involved in any
100%. Yeah. Well, I mean, obviously, I agree with Carol on that. 100%. You have to have America involved. This is why, ultimately, the mineral deal is going to be important, because you're going to have Americans in that region, and that's going to be important. But the thing is part of what...
jumping on a bandwagon here.
No, I don't.
Because the bottom line is that any deal that is done is not going to be done with Europe or Starmer. It's going to be done between Putin and Trump.
Look, there's a reason why today in the House you saw Kemi Badnoch and James Cleverly and people from all sides agreeing, because ultimately they've got to put their best foot forward, haven't they? They've got to show this is the strongest thing we can do. Now, ultimately, as we've just been chatting about, there is a whole lot of games that are going to be played behind the scenes and in front of cameras. But part of what they've got to do is show this is the strongest possible thing we can do. You are absolutely right to say that Europe... I'm trying to agree with you. You're absolutely right to say that Europe hasn't done enough,
Starmer and the EU's job is to persuade Ukraine to the carve up. That's what they're there to do. They're not there to help Ukraine. They're there to persuade them to take Trump's deal. That's what it's all about. And they're not going to peacekeep. No, Putin is never going to agree to a peacekeeping force in Ukraine. It's never going to happen. So Starmer can promise whatever he likes. They can look like the big...
Surely that's ultimately up to the people of Ukraine what deal they accept. And I think Well, of course it is, but I do...
I get that. Look, I absolutely get... And again, I'll preface it. I've said this numerous times on this show, because this is such a complicated topic. If Putin had invaded like Carlisle or somewhere, I wouldn't want him to get a single piece of it.
Exactly.
Obviously, I wouldn't. But he didn't invade Carlisle, he invaded Ukraine, a country that I've never been to, and many people in this country have never been to. And Ukraine might now have to lose a bit of territory.
Well, I think we've got a strong connection with Ukraine, because there are thousands, if not hundreds of thousands, of Ukrainians in the United Kingdom. One of the most uplifting things think we've seen in the last decade was the reaction of the British people welcoming Ukrainians into their homes. So I think, I think there's a lot of warmth from this country towards Ukraine. Boris Johnson, Keir Starmer, British Prime Minister Rishi Sunak, they're well regarded in Ukraine. We have been steadfast in our support of them. But I go back to the point that actually, to see peace in Ukraine, there has to be an American involvement. Because if you think about British troops,
there has to be.
How this war started was Russia fomenting what was allegedly an internal civil war in the Donbass region, with Russian troops pretending to be Ukrainian and fighting. Just imagine if we put British armed forces into what would be paraded by Russia as an internal civil war, with people shooting British troops, killing British troops. What would we do?
But what I'm saying is,
it's got to be ultimately. It's got to be the might of America that holds this peace together.
I don't want a single British life to be lost in the defence of Ukraine. I don't.
Yeah, but in some ways, the way you get the best deal is that you've got to show. Like right now, I don't understand. Carol, you're not letting me speak. If I can't speak, you're not going to hear what I'm saying. But I don't understand what the alternative is. Did you want us to basically all be silent this weekend? Did you want Keir Starmer and all the European leaders not to meet? What did you want to happen?
Are you putting words into my mouth now?
Well, OK, so if you wanted that to happen, I think that's quite shocking, actually.
On the same
No. We actually love each other. We actually. Do you know what? We get on very well, me and Carol. No, I don't. I'm sorry. And do you know what I say? Seriously, my grandma and grandpa, people, that fought, and lived through World War II. I'm not saying it's comparable in that way, but there is something about there is an aggressor. Putin is an aggressor. There is something about saying that is a sovereign nation. There is something about saying we stand up.
It's not saying enough's enough. Money-wise, life-wise, if there's a peace deal on the table, should we just sign it? Do you think get them to sign it?
I'm very reluctant to say yes, but I don't. The alternative.
Well, at any cost. At any cost.
And years more death. That's the alternative.
Yeah, I just don't see. I don't see what. I don't want this meat grinder to continue for a while. But anyway, right. Well, I'm sure we've resolved absolutely nothing there. But of course, that's kind of the issue we're dealing with. I know at home you guys listen to it and see it, and I don't know. These are possibly the exact same arguments you're having on your sofa tonight. Everyone's very split on this. But